What's up, guys? This is going to be my first ever YouTube video going over my favorite commander and the current deck list for it, so let's jump right into it. Alright, let's just hurry and go over Kinnan Bonder Prodigy real quick. For 1 green and a blue, you get a legendary 2/2 creature that's a human druid that says whenever you tap a non-land permanent for mana, add 1 mana of any type that permanent produced. This includes all your mana dorks, mana rocks, any of them. They're just going to produce 1 extra mana of any color that they produced. Then you can dump that mana into Kinnan's second ability, which is pay 5, a green, and a blue. Look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may put a non-human creature card from among them onto the battlefield. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in any random order. This ability is absolutely insane because you're basically just cheating a creature onto the battlefield for 7 mana. Starting with our artifact mana ramp, we have Everflowing Chalice with a multi-kicker of 2. Great for start of games and mid-game, because the more you kick it, the more it taps for. Next is Soul Ring, a commander staple, because what would we do without Soul Ring? Probably just have an unfinished commander deck. But Soul Ring taps for 2 colorless, but thanks to Kinnan, taps for 3. Arcane Signet, a nice card in the deck, because it can tap for a green or a blue. And Felwar Stone taps for a mana of any color that a land an opponent controls could produce. Fractured Power Stone taps for a colorless. Guardian Idol enters battlefield tapped, but does tap for a colorless. And if you pay 2, he'll become a 2/2, but more than likely will be using this artifact just for its mana ability. Liquimental Torque taps for a colorless and can turn non-land permanents into artifacts. Mind Stone taps for a colorless, and we may use this card's other ability in the later game, which is pay 1, sacrifice it, and draw a card. The last 4 out of 12 cards for our artifact mana ramp, we have Prismatic Lens, Talisman of Curiosity, the Iron Crag, and Thought Vessel. Prismatic Lens taps for a colorless, and if you pay 1 and tap it, it can produce a mana of any color. Talisman of Curiosity is a great card because along with tapping for a colorless mana, it also can tap for a green or a blue at the cost of just 1 life, which isn't that big of a deal for the value that you're going to get out of it in this deck. The Iron Crag taps for colorless, and you can also equip it to a legendary creature when they enter the battlefield for 3 mana, and it will just give them an extra +3/+3. Thought Vessel taps for a colorless and gives you no maximum hand size. Very fun card, but with how much mana you're gonna have, more than likely you're gonna be playing whatever's in your hand very quickly. Alright, getting into our creature mana ramp first, we have the 1-drop mana rampers. Llanowar Elves, Elvish Mystic, and Finhorn Elves are each costing 1 and tapping for 1 green mana. Then we have Boreal Druid that taps for a colorless, still very useful, and Birds of Paradise that taps for a mana of any color. If you get one of these cards in your starting hand with a couple lands and any other ramp card, you're going to be able to trigger Kinnan's ability by turn 3, which is amazing to have a huge scary creature out on turn 3 and have everybody wonder why they let you play this deck. Starting our 2-drop mana ramp creatures off, we have Armored Scrapgorger that taps for a mana of any color as well as exiles cards from graveyards, which can be very helpful. Elysian Caritad taps for a mana of any color, but if you control a creature with power 4 or greater, this plant taps for 2 mana instead, giving you a total of 3 mana of whatever color you choose as long as you control Kinnan. Llanowar Loam Speaker taps for a mana of any color and can turn your lands into 3/3 creatures until end of turn. Silver MYR, for 2 colorless, you get a 1/1 that taps for blue. Intrepid Paleontologist taps for a mana of any color as well as has an exile ability and a dinosaur ability that won't be much used unless you decide to swap some cards out and add dinosaurs. And not the final mana ramp that's in this deck, but the last of the mana ramp creatures, we have Naga Vitalis that adds 1 mana of any type a land you control could produce, giving us a nice blue or green as long as we control a forest or an island. Paradise Druid is a very nice card because not only does it tap for a mana of any color, but it has hexproof as long as it's untapped. Curion Elves. When Curion Elves enters the battlefield, choose a color. We're just going to pick blue because we're playing Simic like a boss, and then it'll tap for a green or 1 mana of the chosen color, which will be blue. Ornithopter of Paradise. For 2 colorless, we get to tap it for a mana of any color. Poison Dart Frog. This card is hilarious not only because he does tap for a mana of any color, but he also has reach, and if you pay 2, Poison Dart Frog gains Death Touch until end of turn. Great card to have at the beginning of the game because no one will want to attack you for the first couple of turns. Alright, we're going to be going over our big token creature makers. First up is Spawning Kraken for 5 and a blue. Whenever Kraken, Leviathan, Octopus, or Serpent you control deals combat damage to a player, create a 9/9 blue Kraken creature token. Great token generator, can win you games pretty easily. Hydra Broodmaster. It's 4 with 2 forests and has the ability XX Forest and Monstrosity X. If this creature isn't monstrous, put X +1/+1 counters on it and it becomes monstrous. When Hydra Broodmaster becomes monstrous, create XXX green Hydra creature tokens. And as you can see, this is definitely a game-winning ability right here because it combos perfectly with our high mana, and I'll later show you how to infinitely combo it. Giant Adaphage, giant 7/7 insect, 4/7, has trample, and whenever Giant Adaphage deals combat damage to a player, create a token that's a copy of Giant Adaphage. So basically you're just making a bunch of 7/7s that are all copies of each other to help you win the game. Next up, we have our big land creatures. Starting off, we have Nyxbloom Ancient. If any of you aren't familiar with Nyxbloom, if you tap a permanent for mana, it produces 3 times as much of that mana instead. This includes all your lands, mana dorks, and mana rocks. This is also a game-winning card because you can trigger Kinnan's ability very easily at the beginning of the game 3 to 6 times. With this card, if you get it out early, or if you have it later, you can end up getting every creature onto the battlefield. Liege of the Tangle, an 8/8 with trample, and his text says, whenever Liege of the Tangle deals combat damage to a player, you may choose any number of target lands you control and put an awakening counter on each of them. Each of those lands is an 8/8 green elemental creature for as long as it has an awakening counter on it. They're still lands, another great game-winning ability. Vorinclex, Voice of Hunger, is a 7/6 with trample, and it says whenever you tap a land for mana, add 1 mana to your mana pool of any type that land produced. Whenever an opponent taps a land for mana, that land doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. Great card for doubling your mana, destroying your opponent's ramp, and making Vorinclex a hard target for everyone to get rid of because of his ability. Our control creatures are fantastic help for controlling the board and getting rid of any other threatening creatures. Hullbreaker Horror has flash, this spell can't be countered, and whenever you cast a spell, choose up to 1. Return target spell you don't control to its owner's hand, or return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. Tidespout Tyrant, a watered-down version of Hullbreaker Horror, but still has the most important part, has flying, and whenever you cast a spell, return target permanent to its own. Lorthlos, the Tidemaker, a legendary octopus that says whenever Lorthlos, the Tidemaker, attacks, you may pay 8. If you do, tap up to 8 target permanents. Those permanents don't untap during their controller's next untap steps. Great card, especially since our deck can actually produce the mana and we will still have extra to trigger Kinnan's ability because this deck is insane with mana. Ulamog's Crusher, an 8/8 with Annihilator 2. Pathraiser of Ulamog, a 9/9 has Annihilator 3 and can't be blocked except by 3 or more creatures. Flayer of Loyalties has a great ability. When you cast this spell, gain control of target creature until end of turn. Untap that creature until end of turn. It has base power and toughness 10/10 and gains trample, Annihilator 2, and haste. And then Flare of Loyalties himself has Annihilator 2 and Trample with base power and toughness 10-10. Alright, next up we got our big power creatures. First up is Earthquake Dragon. It's an elemental dragon, but we're going to be cheating him into play, so it doesn't matter how much he costs. He has Flying Trample, and then pay 2 and a green, sacrifice a land, return Earthquake Dragon from your graveyard to your hand. Next up is Ancient Stone Idol. He is a 12/12 with Flash and Trample, and he costs 1 less to cast for each attacking creature. And when Ancient Stone Idol dies, create a 6/12 colorless construct artifact creature token with Trample. World Spine Worm, a classic, 8 with 3 greens. He's a 15/15 worm with Trample, and when World Spine Worm dies, put 3/5/5 green worm creature tokens with Trample onto the battlefield. When World Spine Worm is put into a graveyard from anywhere, shuffle it into its owner's library. Platinum Empyrean is a simple 8/8 for 8 and says your life total cannot change. And then Ulevenwald Oddity. He's a 4/4 for 4, and he has Trample, Haste, and if you pay 5 and 2 green, you can transform Ulevenwald Oddity into Ulevenwald Behemoth. The only thing better than controlling your own big broken creatures is taking someone else's big broken creature. All 3 of these cards do the same thing but for slightly different mana costs. Controlling Magic costing 4 total, and Mind Control and Persuasion costing a total of 5, all say enchant creature, you control enchant creature. Very broken cards that give you great value and possible loss of friendship for taking someone else's commander. Counterspell cards are important in this deck because they can counter anything you don't like, from a board wipe to another counterspell. Counterspell, pay 2 blue for counter target spell, very basic. Broken Consecration, 1 mana of any color and 2 blues for counter target spell, and it also has a madness cost you can pay instead. Didn't Say Please for a mana of any color, and 2 blue says counter target spell. Its controller puts the top 3 cards of their library into their graveyard. Saw It Coming for 2 blue and 1 mana of any color, counter target spell, neutralize counter target spell, and has cycling 2. These cards are what makes this deck absolutely broken and is almost guaranteed to win if you can get these cards onto the battlefield. Pemin's Aura, for a mana of any color and 2 blue, you can enchant a creature and use the following ability: pay a blue to either untap enchant creature, give it flying, give it hexproof until end of turn, or pay a mana of any color to give it +1/-1 or -1/+1 until end of turn. If you put this enchantment onto any one of your mana ramping creatures that taps for a mana of any color, you can tap that creature for 2 blue mana because of Kinnan's ability. You're going to use Pemin's Aura ability to pay 1 blue and untap that creature and tap that creature for 2 green. Then use the 1 leftover blue mana to untap it and make another 2 blue, and either make another 2 green or another 2 blue over and over again. This combo creates infinite colored mana freed from the reel. A more simple version of Pemin's Aura enchants a creature, and you can pay a blue to either untap or tap target creature. And if you put it onto a mana ramping creature, you're going to get unlimited colored mana thanks to Kinnan. Basalt Monolith, not quite as good as either of these auras, but still a game-winning card, will create infinite colorless mana by itself. It does not untap during your untap step, but you can pay 3 colorless to untap it at any time. And because it taps for 3 colorless, Kinnan will make it tap for 4 colorless, allowing you to untap it for 3 colorless, profiting 1 colorless mana each time you do it. And doing this infinite times, great game, winning card, and generates infinite mana. Before I show you where you're going to dump all that mana, the first part is getting those infinite mana combo cards out. Moonsilver Key costs 2, and 1 to tap it and then sacrifice, but then it says, you search your library for an artifact card with a mana ability, which is going to be Basalt Monolith, or basic land card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. Drift of Phantasms, one of the only blue cards I could find that could tutor for either Peminen's Aura or Freed from the Real with its Transmute ability. It has Transmute 1 and 2 blue, discard this card. Search your library for a card with the same converted mana cost as this card, reveal it, and put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. Great tutor card for either of our enchantments. Then there's Trophy Mage. That says when Trophy Mage enters the battlefield, you may search your library for an artifact card with converted mana cost 3. Reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. Alright, these next tutor cards have multiple uses because they can either tutor for a Drift of Phantasms to tutor for our infinite combo, or they can bring out any other power creature that you want to play. Primal Command, pay 3 and 2 green, and choose 2. Target player gains 7 life, put target non-creature permanent on top of its owner's library. Target player shuffles his or her graveyard into his or her library. Search your library for a creature card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. Fauna Shaman, pay 1 and a green for a 2/2 Elf Shaman with the ability, pay 1 green and tap Fauna Shaman. Then discard a creature card, search your library for a creature card, reveal it, put it into your hand, and then shuffle. Great for tutoring a big game-winning creature or Drift of Phantasms to tutor for your infinite combo. Uncage the Mengarine, cost X and 2 green, and says search your library for up to X creature cards with different names that each have converted mana cost X. Reveal them, put them into your hand, then shuffle your library. Great for getting the tutor to the infinite, or getting a bunch of big creatures that share a converted mana cost out. Here's the game-winning combo. Whether you tutor for Peminen's Aura or Freed from the Real, and have a creature with tap for a mana of any color ability onto the battlefield, which is easy to get because Kinnan goes through your deck to get you creature cards. Once you have one of these enchantments on the battlefield, make infinite green and blue mana. You're going to dump it into Kinnan's ability until you find Hydra Broodmaster and Ulvenwald Oddity. You're going to transform Ulvenwald Oddity into Ulvenwald Behemoth, giving all your creatures trample, haste, and +1/+1. Then activate Hydra Broodmaster's ability, making an infinite army of infinite Hydras that all have trample and haste. And that is how you win games. If your deck already hasn't won the game with any other cards, it's going to win through this condition.